So, I've noticed a somewhat disturbing trend in the so-called manosphere, and that is the trend of men basically criticizing feminists, bringing up double standards, the problems that men have, and then not identifying themselves as MRA. And instead they call themselves egalitarians or equalists or humanists or whatever fucking word there is out there now. And this video is really just to say people like Sargon of Akkad, Goodfella, the Amazing Atheist, all those people who don't call themselves MRA, even though they bring up issues like male genital mutilation. You are part of the problem. You are part of the problem, and the reason why you are part of the problem is because you are basically saying to men, get to the back of the line. And you may not think you're saying that, but that is exactly what you are saying when you say you're an egalitarian or a humanist. And the reason that is because humanists aren't doing shit for men. That's just the harsh reality of it. And the reason why they're not doing shit for men is because the civilization has a mental block to men's suffering, and having a group called equalist or humanist, they're not going to help men by challenging these problems. No, they try to improve civilization as a whole, which is not a bad thing. I'm not dismissing egalitarianism. My problem though is that, well, first of all, calling yourself an egalitarianist is a bit redundant anyway, because if you want to improve the third world, you have to let their economy develop. So no matter how much propaganda you give to the West of saying, oh, here's democracy, look how great democracy is, you should have democracy. I mean, look at Iraq right now, for instance. They want to go back to being an Islamic state, despite how many bombs we... I mean, it's quite selfish of Iraq. I mean, we blew up 500,000 Iraqis, and they still haven't become a democracy. Anyway, but by calling yourself an egalitarian, you are part of the problem, because you are basically saying, men, get to the back of the fucking line. In fact, when you say you're an egalitarian instead of an MRA, you are basically saying, you might as well just say, well, the feminists will get onto it. That's basically what you were basically saying, because there has to be a specific movement which says, which basically caters to elevating the status of men, at least bringing male suffering to the public eye. And okay, now granted, not all these people that I mentioned dismiss the MRA completely. Although I think the Amazing Atheist made a fucking retarded comment or something along the lines of, he's not an MRA because he thinks that MRA and feminism are equally problematic. I don't know, I can't remember what he quite said, but which is absolutely preposterous. I mean, it would have been accurate to say the MRA has the potential to be as bad as feminism, but right now it's anything but, because well, for one, we just don't get the same resources from the government. But as I was saying, these humanist groups are not going to challenge, say, male genital mutilation. They're not going to challenge them. And the reason why is because it's not politically correct. And the reason why it's not politically correct is because male suffering is not recognized. And that is why there needs to be an MRA. And no matter how much you call yourself humanist, all that does is basically say, when you call yourself a humanist, all it does is basically diminish the MRA, and it basically puts men's issues at the on the back burner. If you leave it to these humanists, things like male genital mutilation will eventually be solved in the year, I don't know, 3,500, because it's not a priority for them. It's never going to be a priority. It's never going to be a priority. They don't give a shit. They don't care. And that is why there needs to be an MRA, because there needs to be a centralized force with men's issues at heart. And yes, it could be corrupted. I'll give you that. It could end up becoming like feminism. But to that I say, so fucking what? If women get to have a female supremacy movement, then you know what? Screw it. Why don't we become a male supremacy movement? Maybe we can. Hell, I mean, let's say we do become a male supremacy movement. Maybe it will cancel feminism out. Maybe politicians will have one woman in their ear and one man in their ear, and the politician is like, okay, fuck it. I'm just going to be an egalitarian situation. That is the worst case scenario, and I don't even think that's going to happen because men consist of 49% of the population. So this whole notion that that the MRA could be just as bad as feminism, it's completely unfucking founded. Another reason why it's unfounded is because women have children. They have the babies. It's their. I'm just going to go on and say it. Children are women's property. That's just the way it is, and that is what the law sees men as. They see them as they see them as what sperm bank ATM machines. Basically, they don't actually see them as a parent, just as a sort of butler, for instance. But as I was saying, if I was to go to one of these egalitarian, the so-called egalitarian meetings, which, you know, if someone says I'm an egalitarian, basically what they're saying is, I don't give a shit, I don't care, I'm not really that enthusiastic, and because the egalitarian is basically an uncontroversial label that doesn't mean anything, because we're all so-called egalitarians. But as I was saying, to the amazing atheist, Sargon of Akkad or Goodfellow, let me ask you this: what has egalitarianism done for men? What has it done? Has it ended male genital mutilation? Nope. Has it created 50-50 parenting? Nope. Has it ended the war on drugs? No, of course not. It hasn't done fucking shit. It hasn't done anything. And that is because it's much more easier to advocate for a specific group, for instance, women or men, and than it is to for the whole world. I mean, that's why abortion is legalized, and yet something like euthanasia is highly restricted, if not illegal, because people care more about a specific group, a sort of tribal mentality, than the whole human race altogether. And just to go back to what I was saying, if you call yourself one of these egalitarians, after everything I say, you are part of the fucking problem. You are part of the problem, and you are almost as bad as the feminists. In fact, because you are basically reinforcing this notion that men can't congregate, they can't discuss issues, they cannot advocate for their own rights, and that's what it is. This isn't about privileges. This is about rights. It's about Article 7 of the Human Rights, which basically gives men the same protections as women, such as ending male genital mutilation. And if you can't understand that, if you can't understand that men have to congregate to get those rights, then there's a problem here. And one of the criticisms that we get is this so-called Marxism. Now, I'm just going to go out and say it. One group has to dominate another. And that's going to be controversial, but it's the truth. And the reason it's the truth is because if you look at history, there's always been one group that has been played against the other by a government in order to gain legitimacy. For instance, in my country it used to be Protestants versus Catholics, and it became Catholics against Protestants. Now it's old against youth. It's race basing, all that kind of stuff. But the point is, in order for a government to gain legitimacy, one group has to be played off against another. Now, as I was saying before, I don't think men's interests can ever dominate society again, because women are these perpetual victims. But there are some things that aren't zero-sum game. For instance, 50-50 parenting, or what else? Or again, going back to male genital mutilation. So, yes, one group has to dominate the other. There's degrees of domination, but I'll tell you something. Bernard Chapin, I don't agree with Bernard Chapin, but he's correct in one thing, and that is the state exists to replace men. And yes, so just to reiterate, if you call yourself an egalitarian after this, and you refuse to call yourselves a men's rights activist, or you're against, say, circumcision because it conflicts with your religion, you are part of the fucking problem. You have to be an MRA, and I'm not saying you have to worship AVFM or Paul Elam to do that. Have a good day.